When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.
Hey, we're ready. We're back. What's going on, Neal? We're back in the studio. Thanks so much for listening. This is Master Keys, episode 19. We're almost sure of.
Yeah.
What's going on, Neal?
Not too
How
much.
are you?
Well,
I've missed you, man.
yeah, as I say, it's been a little while. We've been almost 2 weeks.
2 weeks since we recorded. Yeah.
I was away. I jetted off to the land of USA again. I think I may have at the very start of our podcast as well.
Yeah. You went to like Idaho the last time.
Yeah, to pick potatoes.
And this time to North Carolina.
This time to North Carolina to pick apartments. So
Very excited to hear about that.
yeah, I'm going to get into that, explain what I found,
Yeah.
and tell you if it's worth it or not. And then I
Cool.
did a little stop off in Florida on the way home.
Cool.
Great.
Oh. I've actually I've never been to Florida, never had any desire to go to Florida, and I kind of want to go to Miami.
You got to go to see it.
Yeah.
It's a very cool place. It's a very weird place, though. I was saying this, I was getting my haircut earlier, and I was telling them on the water, the houses are 20,000 square feet, $20 million, with a boat parked in front that's $400 million, like just the whole coastline for like 100 miles.
Yeah.
And then you drive 2 blocks inland, and it's just like,
Man, this is what I've heard about Miami in general. It's like, oh my God, hyper rich, extravagant, and then you go 3 blocks off the main drag, and it's a little grimy.
you may lose your rims of your car and your life.
Sounds amazing. I want to go.
It was very good. I'm
My
gonna tell
kind
a
of
quick
place.
story. I got to tell a quick story then.
What's that?
I got to tell a quick story
Okay,
about my
you
2
wanna hear-
blocks in. This was kind of funny.
Oh, please, did Neal get mugged? I know you don't have your gold chain anymore, Neal.
No, I get. You know what? Everyone's got their shit. But the hotel we were staying at was on the water. Not a super fancy hotel by any means, but it didn't have laundry set up yet. It was under renovation, so the laundry room, whatever, was shut down. So I had to go to a laundromat. So I had to go in maybe about a mile and a half inwards inland to go to this laundromat. And again, walking around right where we were, like literally there's massive yachts parked right in front of the hotel. And then I start walking, keep walking. And it's like whatever. The buildings are getting less tall as I go.
Yeah.
And I get to the laundromat. And it's just like a complete total change. And anyways, the one I thought this was kind of funny, but the guy was doing his laundry. He just stripped part of
Just
his
geared
load of
down.
laundry. He geared down
Oh my God.
and threw his laundry in with the load that he was doing.
Are we talking full naked?
He kept on his underwear, but
Okay.
it was like, this was like, we're talking like tight undies, man.
Don't stop there, you coward.
And I mean, I get it. You know what? Maybe he doesn't have a house and like affordability and all that to get it done. Like, whatever, respect. It was just kind of a goofy scenario, just the way that it went on, and he was so casual about it, like didn't care. But
That is pretty funny. When we were in high school, a bunch of my buddies used to drink in the laundromat before dances and stuff because it was open 24 hours.
Oh,
And
yeah.
as a kid, like you're looking for somewhere to drink,
the
and like
laundromat.
the laundromat was a place that was open 24 hours and warm and bright, and you could just
Sit in your underwear and drink.
sit in your underwear. Yeah. That is random, man.
Yeah, but
Cool. What else is going on?
not too much. I mean, that's really been the big one. I got a closing coming up on Friday that I'm going to have some more issues for, as I always do.
That's funny you mentioned that because my closing on those 8 units was supposed to be, I want to say 3 days ago.
I want to say 3 days ago. That doesn't sound good.
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be 3 days ago. It sounds so ridiculous because if you were buying a house, you'd never be like, I don't know, we were supposed to close 3 days ago. We didn't close. This is like commercial. It's like, yeah, I think it was supposed to be 3 days ago. And then we were going to move it to the end of the month. And I think now we're actually just moving into the start of December, which I'm kind of bummed about because I do want to get in there and get started and, start taking it over and all the logistics.
What's
but
the
like
delay?
just the financing. Bank's like, yeah, we'll get around to it. I'm like, okay.
Oh my god.
The sellers is fine with it because they know the financing is approved. It's just the logistics. And there's a lot of moving parts because I refinanced those 2 other buildings like I highlighted on another show. I'm taking some of that money to buy this property. And yeah, they just don't really care about your timeline. They're just like, I told them
This
this
is what
date.
they can meet, and they know that you need them. There's no reason really that they got to crank it. I mean, a bunch of people work from home, and there's all these weird transitions, and it's just appraisers are tied up more. Everyone's tied up more. It's crazy, and there's just
Yeah.
on the commercial side. I feel like there's more transactions. Residentially, we're down, but commercially, I think we're definitely up.
And there's just a lot of refinances going on because everyone's up in value. So they're looking to,
Get some
take
equity.
that equity out, get some liquidity, do something else. And so the appraisals are backed up. And, regardless if it's a purchase or a refi, it's the same system that it's going through.
Yeah.
You're in the same queue regardless. So yeah, maybe the actual new money purchases are down, but the actual volume of overall transactions, including refinances, is up quite a bit. So, but yeah, so I'll hopefully have some news on that, and I think that'd be kind of a cool thing to walk people through. And you've got one coming up as well. When's that close?
Yeah, I got the 19 unit closing December 6th, I believe that is. Same thing though. We're getting down to the wire. All the financing's done, approved, all the documents are signed, but it's the same deal. I'm using a refinance to make the down payment. It's all with the same bank, but I am already like, we're gonna need an extra week.
That December 6th creeping up, man.
That's
it's creeping up.
Like in commercial land, it's like 2 weeks away. You're like, oh, if it's not pretty much money in your hand already, you're pretty much gonna have to delay. Like it's like that's how it feels effectively. Like there's no last minute.
Yeah, and it was funny too because the other side was like, "Oh yeah, so just make sure you change your power takeover date and your water takeover date and all, and your insurance." I'm like, "Oh yeah," and set those up to begin with because I knew it was going to close this date. I'm like, "That's just a good reminder for me to set it up for when it does."
I'm bad for that too. I closed it on the other one, and I was like, I didn't set up the landlord account, so the hallways were dark for 3 days.
Oh man, that's funny.
My bad. But yeah, so I have that one coming up. That'll be the same thing. It'll be good to get some people through. I'm actually also excited to show them my other ones that I closed there, whatever that was, 3 weeks ago, the 18 units. We got some empty units there. I think we had up to 5 empty units already, which is sweet. And I just want to kind of show what they look like and what they end up being, because we actually have on that
little
same
before and after.
A little before and after, because on that same street we have some other buildings underway that are close to being finished. You can get like almost a direct perspective and comparison.
Oh, are these still the 3 that there was the environmental? Those ones, right?
Yes,
yeah,
got the Enviro back because we actually went and dug up the ground.
Yeah, all
passed.
clear. Yeah,
there was hydrocarbons in the soil, but under the residential limits.
Nothing wrong with a little bit of hydrocarbon in your life.
Exactly.
Well, it's
it
not too
just
much.
keeps the dirt moving nice and smooth. You don't want it sticking together, right?
It keeps the dirt moisturized.
But so I want to get people to see those because when we were at the REIC thing yesterday, they were at an REIC lunch to discuss tenancy. Chandler yelled about tenancy, and they brought up the fact that there was people doing renovations that weren't actually doing proper renovation to the units.
Yeah, but they could not come up with any stats about it. 4 people, one from the Department of Housing, one from the Tenancy Board, one from Nova Scotia Legal Aid, one from IPONS. It's like, yeah, how many? Like, we don't know. Well, how many were like done correctly or not correctly?
Nothing.
We don't know.
Nothing.
So there is this whole idea that this is going on at some, if you believe the media, that it's going on at rampant rates.
99% of units.
Yeah, and they can't point to a single case, right? Or at least they cannot track them. And I understand it's like, well, it's being done and it's not being reported because it's not being done correctly and so on and so forth. However, you would think for how much it's in the news, someone would have done some sort of count on how often this is happening, and none of them have any idea. Because we talked about, some people were upset with ones that happened.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they were done above board. Like the process that was in place was followed. Now they're changing the process to make it a bit more rigorous to keep better tracking. But the previous ones were done, generally speaking, they were done by the book. People may not like the result, but they were at least done by the rules in a lot of cases, yourself included.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I don't know how they did them not by the book. They're like, people were rent-evicting people without, like, not by the book. And I'm like, but you can't evict. The person just doesn't leave. And then what do? You can't. Yeah.
Like the only way to get someone out is they agree to it in some idea. And I understand people like, well, they involuntarily agree because they're bought out or they don't want to, but they reach some sort of agreement or they went through the process. So unless there's this thing that people are physically having their doors locked. But again,
everyone's been pumped when I've handed them the $2,000. I'll tell you that for free.
Yeah, but you wouldn't believe that based on the media coverage. And I mean, there have certainly been some dubious ones. Like there was a building where there was down to one person who wouldn't leave, but the city issued a demolish permit of the building. Like the city gave the owner a permit that says you can demolish it. Yeah. So this guy was told he had to leave because the building was being demolished, and those landlords were villainized. Oh, you got more insight on it?
Well, but here's the thing. The city issued the demolition permit because they had already issued an eviction notice for the entire building. So as per the city's directive, the building was supposed to be empty.
Yeah.
And then like you're saying, when they did start tearing it down and there was a mistake made, because, well, not really a mistake, the guy just didn't leave.
He refused to leave. He tied himself to the tree.
He literally tied himself to the tree and refused to leave. Then he was villainized for it. He was made out to be this big bad...
The landlord.
Yeah, the landlord was made out to be the big bad boy, even though he followed all the procedures. And the city thought that he had to. They were like, yeah, based on our paperwork, you've done what you need to, and it's your building now.
Yeah.
So... it was more frustrating than anything. And then we only had about 2 minutes to talk to them and then get out of there. So
no more questions.
Yeah,
no more questions. Shut it down.
Yeah. So no, that wasn't good. But so I want to show some people just like what we're doing there, so you can get an idea of like You know what? This is kind of worth it. Also, I'm going to send you a picture right now, Tanner, to flash up of what my buildings used to look like.
Yeah, I think I saw some of them. Well, there's one that was like literally burned out, I think.
Yeah. Well, one of mine. Yeah, I got one of mine literally burnt out.
That's why there's this guy who like trolls us. I hope he listens to this episode because I made a point of telling him to actually listen to the episodes because he just trolls us without any context.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh yeah, not like those landlords on Master Keys podcast who just raised the rent for painting a door. And you've got a building that was literally burned to the ground. Like it was boarded up.
Yeah.
Like
multiple, literally boarded up, burnt
up, and it's like
got them vacant too. Like they were just completely inhabitable. The plumbing, you could literally, the plumbers were standing in front of me and they grabbed one of the pipes and it just fell out of like its holdings because it all had frozen and heated so much it just popped.
But then he's posted that we just changed the doors and jacked the rent.
Yeah, no,
like it's.
I thought about that.
Yeah.
The problem is there's no interiors in the units. So I don't know if I can rent them.
Yeah, like there was literally a burnt out shell. I'm surprised that building was even salvaged. But that'd be really cool to see some before and afters of what you're doing now, and I'll do the same thing at my next one. I've got an accepted offer on the 2 development sites that I put on the market.
Yes.
There was one downtown Dartmouth, which was a great size for someone who was looking to get into new construction, but maybe not really scale up large. These were 3 development sites that each would support a 4-unit dwelling, so 12 units total, which is a nice manageable size. Still going through due diligence, but that was for a client of mine. And it's really interesting because he bought that for one use, right? It had a building on it, and his plan was to run his operations, his small business out of the building. And it had a certain zoning that was in place for the land. Yep. And I mentioned to him, I said, well, you might want to look at this opportunity because they're rezoning the city here, this little opportunity to increase your zoning. Mm-hmm. He's kind of like, I mean, this is what I'm going to use it for. It's kind of as of right. I'll just kind of stick to it. I'm like, I honestly just feel like maybe you should try to increase your zoning. Because it's a very, very unique property that historically had been used commercial, but is in effectively a residential area. And since we're rezoning the city right now anyway, this would be the time to say, hey, let's lock something good in here. And I've mentioned before, like, get some planners in your life. Planners are so good. I've got some really good friends and clients and partners who are planners, and I connected them, and they got him just a little nudge up in terms of what could be allowed on those
8
sites.
to 12 sort of thing?
Yeah, just a little slight nudge up. And the reason I was encouraging him to do it is in case like plans change down the road. And his plans did change, and we ended up selling off the land and got a way better yield on it because of that little bit of work there. So that's kind of the interesting thing about land and understanding your planning and doing some research and getting your ducks in a row, regardless of what you think you're going to do with the property, cover your bases sort of. Yeah.
Actually, to double down on that idea of not knowing 100% what you're going to do with something or with a property, I just came from a mortgage broker's office and we were just chatting. They wanted to introduce themselves and he was asking, what do you typically get your investor clients to go into, like open variables or fixed and all that? And I was like, always open variable products because you never know what you're going to do. Exactly to that point. Like you think you're going to lock in and then, rates have gone up or your rents have gone up or whatever, you need to make a refi. Now you're screwed because you got to pay these massive penalties. So same concept in it to an extent is you never know exactly what you're going to do. So it's better to go with the best case option, assuming that things are going to change. Because it's funny, it doesn't seem like things are going to change, but a year or 2 years is a long time.
Yeah, giving yourself as much flexibility as possible is huge, especially when you're talking about land and redeveloping land and all that stuff, which is something I've kind of gotten a bit more into. And I've got that site that we're also shopping down in Truro, which is kind of cool. So
under contract?
It is under contract, subject to due diligence again. So looking forward to seeing that go through and excited for the next person to take it on.
What due diligence and how long?
Essentially, it's financing, possibly Enviro. I mean, it's under $1 million, so they can indemnify it, and it's got a residential building there now. So I don't think technically they need to do Enviro, but they may want to do it for their own reference. Mainly, the due diligence when you're buying a site like that is about the development agreement. Like, okay, what can I actually do within this framework that you've agreed to with the municipality? What am I agreeing to buy? Because you're speculative buying like an approved lot to build X building. You need to understand the nuance of that and what exactly you'd be putting up there.
Yeah. So interesting. Well, what kind of timeline?
Yeah. I think it was 6-week due diligence and we signed it a week ago. So end of December. We'll know.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Little end of year bonus.
Little end of year bonus. Yeah. Which is another cool thing. I officially passed 55 million and sold.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
that's a huge number.
Yeah.
Huge number.
Yeah, which is a nice little threshold for 2021.
Very gross.
I posted that video, was picking out selections for the building. That's what I've been kind of doing. I'm really excited about where the building is going. Actually, I've got something really interesting to talk about with that if there's time. So one of the things we've spoken about kind of in the early episodes was about here in Canada, these CMHC programs for housing affordability. And there are pros and their cons, I guess.
Yeah.
There's what they're meant to accomplish, and then there's kind of ways where, well-intentioned though they may be and useful though they may be, they kind of fall short, at least of what people expect from affordability.
Mm-hmm.
So in lay terms, these CMHC programs, and there's the RCFI, which is kind of the most extreme affordability measures where you get really like minimal money down, long amortization, really good rates, but in exchange for that, you have to deeply discount your rents. Now, in actual practice, because they use gross household income, those deeply discounted rents are more like $1,800. Right? They're still pretty darn good rents.
Yeah.
Then there's the next program, which is the Flex program, which is 15% down, so 85-15 loan to value, which is still less than conventional. And you have some restrictions as to affordability, but not nearly as deep.
Yeah.
So that was the program I was going through, kind of a hybrid. I'm not going for the RCFI because, frankly, it's just very hard to achieve. And I'm not going conventional because I have to put 25% down. So the Flex program was where I was going to end up. However, when I started the application in the spring, around January, the Canada government bond rate was 0.42.
Mm-hmm.
And I think right now it's around 1.6.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that's not right. Or it was 0.4. It was up 125 basis points. So from 0.4 to 0.5 something.
Yeah.
Either way, it's up 125 basis points, which just is a sign that affordability is, or the interest rates are going up and up and up. And I think the rate that I was going to get went up a full, percentage point effectively.
Yeah.
That took all of the ability to make it affordable and hit this Flex program out the window. All right. So we've been talking a lot about inflation and the impact that's going to have on interest rates. And here's a case where at this time the government is saying we want affordability, like one of their own programs delivered through CMHC is now not achievable given this increase in interest rate. So
What's the play?
The play is I need to now put 25% down instead of 15, which
is an extra.
It's an extra $2 million.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just skipped a beat there.
Yeah, it's like a $19 million building, give or take. And so I have to put down 25% instead of 15. The blessing.
No Christmas gifts this year.
No one's getting Christmas. No one's getting. The blessing to that is, one, conventional, so it's way quicker. Don't have to go through CMHC. We've talked about that at length. Two, the building's going to make way more money.
Yeah.
Right? Because I don't have to hit any affordability standards, and I'm going to have a smaller mortgage.
Yeah.
And it allows me kind of more easily to refinance the property.
I was going to say your refi is going to be unreal.
It should be easy to refi 85% loan to value, say 24 months after completion, and the property will be up effectively 4 years worth of growth between
25% lift out of there.
Yeah. So it's going to be a lot of pain currently for some really good gain on the back end.
Chandler's going to have like 17 dune buggies. It's going to be nuts.
All the dune buggies. I actually have to put those in the garage still. I haven't yet. It's getting cold here. So that's just a really interesting situation that I'm facing now going through development right now in this climate where we're trying to keep things affordable. And there are these programs to maybe make things affordable. But now where interest rates have gone up.
Yeah. I liked, not to change, it's not really a change topic, but when we were at the REIC thing, again, to go back to that lunch, the one thing I also took away from it is, like, again, this definition of affordability is very broken because there's like this technical definition that they use across the board that impacts everybody because it's an average. But if they did, like, what they say were deep, what was it, deep affordability? What was he calling it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so deep affordability, that concept of people that are actually requiring it due to whatever set of stringent requirements and issues that they were facing, that was really important. I think that's actually where the problem lies. I don't think this average affordability thing. I think that's like if you again, your average affordability is 1,800, you're always going to find a unit, whether it's new or old, in that wheelhouse. But really, I think, and a lot of those programs could probably just get ditched altogether because really they're not benefiting people. They're actually just some landlords are kind of winning on them.
Yeah, they are being used to increase stock.
They're
now you
increasing
could
inventory.
argue though that it's the people who are winning them were going to build those buildings regardless.
This is what I was
They
saying.
have the money to do it.
It's just way better financing options.
Way better.
That's all. Like, well, prime example is we have some big buildings here in Halifax that are being built through some of these programs.
Oh, yeah.
And these developers have more than enough money to probably just build the building cash. But anyways, on that same note, yeah, this deep affordable, that would make sense. And even if they did do so, like, again, I liked what they were thinking about potentially doing a forced mandate of you have to meet a certain amount of deep affordable units, and or you can offset it by having a certain amount of deep affordable units. Like that concept was not bad, because then think about it, you could have developers buying some of these older stock, maintaining the building and maintaining those rents because they have to be able to achieve what they're doing. And so for them, they're still basically just barely maybe covering costs or breaking even on those buildings. So it's not really a great financial thing for them. It's more of just like a savings account. And then at the same time being able to go build their new buildings and put them where they need to be.
Oh, so effectively it would be across the portfolio, like you could have. Yeah.
So you go out and you buy 100 affordable units, you maintain them at affordable rates, basically, again, just breaking even. You're not making a return on them. It just sits as basically a savings thing. And then you can go build your new buildings.
Right. Interesting.
So, but again, it was addressing that deep affordable. I think that was a definition that needs to be created and really started getting applied.
Yeah, because this is the thing. I mean, sometimes we get painted as people who are anti-affordable housing. Like, it's not the case at all. It's just if you genuinely are working in the industry,
if you understand how it works.
If you understand how it works, like there are real problems with some of these changes they're proposing that long term, and again, it's not going to happen tomorrow, it's not going to happen next year, it's not even going to happen maybe the year after that, but there's going to be this continuing wedge divide between the brand new stock and the older inventory.
Yeah.
The latter is going to it's going to drop off, and it's not going to have the intended benefit. It's just not.
Yeah.
So,
and again, not to keep beating on this point, but I saw the article on Nova Scotia yesterday from, was it Armco, who bought another piece of land?
They're going to bang out some houses,
and they want to bang out some houses, and they want it to be an affordable neighborhood. I don't know if they're trying to save face or what's going on there, but anyways, they're trying to do this 155 acres of all lower priced homes and affordable apartments. The homes are still gonna be 300,000, but you just physically can't build. You can't build anything for less than that, unfortunately. But that's what it is. But still great, because really at the end of the day, the current entry point is 500, right? So you're still quite a bit under that.
Yep.
But they said, here's the problem. They said, even if the city gave us an approval today,
the infrastructure,
the infrastructure alone is going to take us 3 years to get in place. He said,
it's not easy to build those roads and
he
run
said,
that plumbing.
He said, even like you look at the population growth, he said, if we're conservative and saying it was 5,000 or 8,000 a year, he's like, we're going to be like, there's just no, like, we're going to be so much further behind in 3 years. He's like, we need to start pushing these through.
And there's no way that $300,000 home is going to be deliverable in 2 years at $300,000.
You can't deliver one now unless it's micro. Micro homes.
But either way, it's good to push some of these things through. Now, the city made a really good counterpoint, which is that they don't deserve the blame for all of the delays in new stock. Because we've talked about
permits.
There's a lot of people who have permits on properties out there that's just with no intent of building them or no immediate plans to build them.
I guarantee you, it's not one small developer. There's not one small developer out there that's holding a permit. If there's a small guy who's got a permit, he's building it right now.
Totally.
If they were to put it together, I bet you of that, what was it, 20,000 that were outstanding?
Oh my gosh, is that many? Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, I think it was 20,000 units have been approved to be built, but are not being built or construction has not started. I bet you 80% of those are held with like under 10 companies.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I've got my little 60 that I want to start on, right? And it's just, I'm just slowly getting the financing across the finish line, and it's going to get there. And it looks like we're hoping to break ground maybe even earlier than February. So super pumped about that.
That's exciting. So I want to talk about my trip to the States. A little more in detail, not just about the laundromat and why I actually went and what I found. So I went to North Carolina. I had picked North Carolina after probably about a year of due diligence. I'd been to quite a few of the other states, and there was a mixture of factors for me that don't necessarily just have to do with like economics. It was also kind of a political standpoint, like a multiculturalism, like a lot of those items. And so that's how we came to North. I say we, one of my business partners and I, he's also intending to be down there.
Is it because you were kind of trend reading those things and how, political, socioeconomic, immigration, how that relates to value, or that was just more kind of like personal where you'd want to invest in?
Personal, honestly, personal. Yeah. It wasn't everything about just the investment, because if it purely on the investment basis, Texas and Florida would scream at you. Like there's the opportunity to get in with stuff that's cheap. You can build for ultra cheap. There's insane demand. Like things are turning over. Like it's craziness.
I've never been to Texas either. I got to go there too.
Yeah, it's interesting. For me, it was an eye opener. Open carry scares the shit out of me. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like when you're in Superstore and Buddy's just got like a gat strapped to his hip, and you're like,
way.
do you need that to get your apples? I don't think you do, but
Crazy.
yeah,
That is
like
so weird.
and they were everywhere. They were like everyone had them walking around. I walked around. When I went hunting. I went hunting while I was down there, and I had an assault rifle hanging off my neck, and I'm walking through the gas station. Nobody says anything.
Weird.
Like we're talking like a 3.5 foot tall big ass gun, and I'm just walking around, and people are like, he's just hunting. That's cool. I'm like, okay.
Crazy. Anyway.
Anyways, an aside, but yeah, so we landed on North Carolina, and on the economic side of things, which I'll focus on, it's having a lot of growth. There's a west to east coast migration taking place in the States for a multitude of reasons. The biggest and kind of most prominent, obvious one is California is like having a ton of issues with taxes and a lot of rules, and they're having a bunch of different they're having water issues. There's just a ton of different items like that are stacking up.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it started with a lot of high profile names being like kind of making the move to places like Vegas, Texas, Florida.
Like big company names?
Big company name? No, I think more like even just like famous names. There's a lot of people who are like, I'm a big business guy. I'm in California, but I'm tired of this crap. I'm going here. Mm-hmm. And so then they make the move, and then another few follow in their footsteps. And then it kind of followed, their businesses kind of follow too, right? Because instead of having, like if I own the company and I'm headquartered in California, I live there. Now I live in Texas. Good chance I'm moving my headquarters to Texas, right? Mm-hmm. And so that started taking place. That's a few years ago. And it's just been amplifying and amplifying and amplifying. And then COVID doubled down everything. So then because of the density in California, they had crazy numbers. It pushed things. Same with New York. Due to the density and I guess ineffectiveness in shutting things down, crazy numbers, mass exodus out of New York as well. And people moving south, staying east mostly, but also then moving south because probably a little bit better weather and a little bit more spread out. And
those are also two of the most expensive markets in the world.
And then on top
I
of
can't
it,
imagine that didn't have any role. Wow.
Exactly.
So,
and then the unaffordability became another item. So all those things played into it. So you're having these growth periods in these different places. I don't know what the stats are for Texas and Florida, but I know for North Carolina, like where we were looking, it was about 20% year over year average growth across the state for prices. Okay. So very similar to Halifax on that front. And they've had that for about 2 years. And when I even first started shopping there, the per door cost has probably gone about 50% from when
50.
From about a year and a half ago when we first looked at multi-units there. So
is there some concern that the horses left the barn? Like what's
so yeah, a little bit. Yeah. And I feel like I'm a little late to the game in general. But the thing is I see the growth, and it's a similar thing to what I'm saying with Halifax, where the snowballs kind of started going, and it's not this amount of momentum, you can't just stop. Here we can if we don't actually start friggin' building some stuff. But anyways, yeah, if that momentum can't stop, because what's happened now is you see the big companies like Apple, Google's, those guys are setting headquarters up in those states.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Like, what drives the economy in North Carolina? I'm not well versed in.
Yeah, so they're I'd say they're a mixed economy. They have a ton of universities in both cities.
True.
They have the sports teams. Then they have a lot of tech that's coming there as well.
Okay. That's
providing a lot of high paying jobs. Like Apple said they're going to hire, I forget how many thousands of people down there at an average of 130K US, which is like 180K Canadian. And it was like an absurd number. Like when they hire, it's like, okay, we're hiring 10,000 people.
Good jobs that you wouldn't think are going to go anywhere anytime quickly. What like population wise? Like what kind of population is there?
So I'll pull that up actually because I forget now. But Charlotte's a bigger city. Charlotte was I think over let's see here. I should have got my numbers before we got on here. But
I was just kind of curious to kind of scale it to what we're used to.
So Charlotte's 860,000.
Wow, that's eerily. I mean, Halifax proper's, around there.
Yeah, but I was gonna say. It's growing. I think it's closer to 1 million now. That was of 2019, and they were having like a massive amount of influx. And then Raleigh's around 500,000. Now, it feels different, though, because their cities are so spread, like insanely spread out.
Right, like the sprawl. It's not like here where...
Huge urban sprawl. Yeah. They don't have high density. Our downtown here in Halifax feels way more intense than either of theirs.
Really?
Big time.
I picture it as like a little cute little... downtown.
Yeah, it is. It's very quaint. Very, I was going to say hipster.
Neal's like, let me just put this big ass building right here.
Massive tower. No, it's very quaint. It's very, I'm going to say hipster, honestly. Like It's very nice. There's a lot of older buildings that were there from when they used to do manufacturing that have been converted over.
Those are sweet. I love those.
They look great. So much brick. That's the part that made my life. Everything's brick. Looks great. The weirdest
And
thing,
like the good brick, not the painted black brick, like the good.
yeah, the big clay red ones,
those
and
are so nice.
they're kind of rough and stuff. Like they don't look all perfectly the same,
Yeah.
and they look amazing. The houses look so good. Every single house is brick,
Yeah,
and I
it's
just
nice.
makes me so happy. Anyways, the weirdest thing though in the downtown areas is they do have big buildings. They still have some 30s and 40s. The first like 5 to 6 floors, and I mentioned this in my video,
The above ground parking.
it's all above ground parking.
Weird.
Like whenever you go to a site, the first 5 floors are parking.
Someone asked a question about this when I was showing the site, and they're asking like, well, how does that, front to back slope affect the ability to build, and does it create some problems and so on and so forth? And it can actually be advantageous because when you're putting underground parking, you can actually kind of dig into the slope, and it spares you some excavation. But here, our planning is very nuanced and very focused on the pedestrian experience, right? So when the pedestrian walks down the street, how do they experience this building beside them? And the idea, like 4 stories of above ground parking, like people would lose their mind here. They'd be like, that's so cold. We want nice little shops on the main level, parking underground, or no parking at all. Right, so that is crazy that they do that much above ground parking. I saw the buildings; they look kind of weird as someone who doesn't see those.
It does look kind of weird. They do make a bit of an effort to make the pedestrian experience not bad. It's like you don't feel. I didn't really notice that at first until I got to our hotel, and then we like drove up and up and up, and I was like, "Wait a second!" And then I started looking around. I was like, "Everyone's like this." And there was a brand new building being built, and they didn't do any excavation. There was like one level of
Slab on grade.
Yeah, it's like slab on grade, 40
Crazy.
stories. Let's go.
Man, that's so
And
wild.
Yeah, it was their culture though. In general, I think the American culture. Correct me if I'm wrong. Somebody, I'm sure we'll get some corrections here, but it is very built around the automobile and transportation.
Right,
like
right.
every city has a lot of sprawl.
Yeah.
Highways and interstates are everywhere. Tons of surface parking.
I mean,
the roads are wide.
Yeah. Like I'm curious if other than just the sheer cost, like my site works just to dig the hole is going to be about $500,000, $500,000 for one building. Just to dig it down.
It's not absurd though.
I mean, it's not absurd, but it's a lot of money,
It
man.
is, sorry, a lot of money.
It's
yeah.
moving dirt around for $500,000.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's the rationale. Is it cost, or is it soil composition, or is there like an underground transit system? Or
No,
anything
that
like
was my thing. There was no underground transit system. Like that's the part that didn't make any sense to me. And you look at like New York, I believe they have underground parking.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about it, and they have a ton of underground transit and stuff.
Yeah.
For the life of me, I probably should look it up, but for the life of me, I was like, I don't really see why, other than cost.
Yeah.
But I feel like the cost of having to go up an extra 5 stories,
No, man.
you don't think it's going to outweigh or impact on that?
I wouldn't think so.
Once you get going with the concrete, you're just going.
The
I
forms are the
guess.
forms.
I guess.
Interesting.
But they also did it on low mid-rise buildings. Like they'd have 1 or 2
Yeah,
stories
maybe
of
something
parking.
geotechnical why they have to do that, but
Potentially.
it is a weird,
Um,
it's a different look. But this is the nuance of different areas. But
Yeah.
so, actually, let's just cut to the punchline.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you're going to buy down there?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
This is actually news to me. We didn't talk about this
No.
because you were late as always.
Yeah. So we haven't actually secured our first building.
I'm so excited.
But because it's going to be neat. We are definitely going. Like we're now actively pursuing. We know what we want to be, where we want to be, what we're looking for. We're willing to go in both Charlotte and Raleigh. We're going to start with a smaller building and get basically our feet wet with the management.
Smaller than what
contractors.
scale?
20 units.
20 units and same model, renovate.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now here's where the biggest difference is the cost per door to renovate. Our cost per door, I'd say in Halifax to renovate properly, top to bottom, on average, we're spending around, I'd say 45 a door, honestly.
I said 35 to 40, but yeah.
Yeah. And if once you get all your exteriors done and you get some landscaping, it really gets to that.
Your main systems,
Yeah. So down there, and that's with us GCing it. That's not a GC company. If you add a GC company in there to handle the whole
10.
project, like a general contractor where you just have one person, one party you report to, probably add an extra $10K a door. So you're looking at 50 to 60 a door to have a company handle it here for you. There, we met with general contractors. They were saying for everything, all new kitchens, all new floors, all new bathrooms, granite countertops, drywall, like paint to trim, the whole shebang, 15 a door.
Man.
Paying 1 GC. He said high side 18, but 15.
we talked about this. I watch so much of that HGTV stuff. Like, I can't help myself. I love it. This is actually how I kind of got into real estate. I watch it. I'm like, why do I keep watching these shows? I love them.
Selling
But-
Sunset.
Not Selling Sunset. Well, that's not bad. I watched that too. But I was really into these flipping shows.
Yeah.
And occasionally they would like zoom in accidentally. And like the workmanship was a little like, ugh, right? Like good from far, far from good. But I also couldn't believe some of the prices. And this was when I was barely in the
Getting in the
industry.
game. Yeah.
Right. And they'd be like, bathroom, $3,000. And I'm like, what?
The tub's around.
Kitchen all in with, $10,000. It's like, man, these are really, really, really cheap. And it's because their labor is so cheap and the material is cheap too. But I couldn't get over it. I'd be interested to see the quality.
Yeah,
Because
I
then
don't
they're like, and we sold it for $1 million. I'm like, your baseboards don't line up, man. Like you butted them. You didn't miter. Like it's anyway.
Yeah. I'll be curious to see how it goes too. This GC we met with, he had a couple hundred staff and they were doing, I think he was turning over around 600 units a year. So I imagine he's not doing the worst job in the world.
No. I mean, he's obviously hitting what the market down there supports.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, it's funny is at that size, like he's small. Like that is nothing. Like there is.
This is so interesting because you're saying their population is the same or smaller than our population.
Wow, no, but well, we're talking a city here. So Charlotte's 1 million. You're talking versus a province of 1 million.
Yeah, I know, but like that's true. That's true.
And they're having influx of like I think it was like
But we're
20.
600.
Yeah, but they're getting like 25,000 people a quarter, if not more than that.
Really?
Per city.
Damn.
Per city. It's like
That is a major influx of people.
it's when things move down there, it's much more aggressive. Like and this is where I'm interested. Again, the risk is much higher too because you can have that outflux just as fast. But people make their moves really, really fast. And so there's a lot. He said there was 30,000 units going up in Raleigh, or 20 or 30,000 units brand new being built in Raleigh right now, right? So like they have big numbers on everything they touch.
Talk to me price per door.
So price per door, old inventory, it was around 100 a door when I first started looking. Looks like I'm not getting in for under 150 a door, which is a little aggressive. But he was kind of saying like around 150 a door, you sink in your 18 to 20 grand, so you're going to do it for 170 a door. They're reappraising around 240 a door. So it's not bad.
Jives. Yeah.
The other thing is down there you sell. You don't hold on to them. You sell and move up because you can roll forward. You don't get capital gains tax. You can roll it forward in 1031. This is why I want to. This is why.
Yeah, because so far it's like, okay, there's a nice little boom going on. Some prices are better in terms of the labor, but your cost per door is actually kind of the same. So the obvious question, Neal, is like, why would you go there?
Yeah. So real reason being, first of all, actually, it's opportunity. There's like here, if I want 100 units, there's not a single. There's maybe one or two portfolios in the city for sale for 100 units. And you don't even
If that, point me to that portfolio.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So versus there, you want 100 units, you could probably string up 10 of them. And it's just because there's complexes. Like there's a ton of complexes that are 300 units. Like they jam in a lot of density. And so almost every landlord down there, that's what they have. They just have like 100 units. Like that's where they sit. So yeah, that's an option. And then the other thing being is that their market is much more active because of the fact that when you sell, you don't get capital gains, and which is why there's also
so people sell. Yeah,
people sell. That's why there's so many on market, because if you sell, you're not going to get hammered. Like I called so many landlords here that are like, I'm not going to sell because I got hammered with a capital gains bill, so I'm not interested in selling anymore. There's no point. Versus there, if you sell, you can take that money and reinvest it back into something, and you basically continue to defer those capital gains.
which also is good for the economy because people sell it and you buy it and you put in work, and that's good for the economy. And people sell it, they get that money. Well, what are people going to do when they have money? They're going to invest it. They're not going to hide it in their seat cushions.
And if they do hide in their seat cushion, they do have to pay the capital gains bill.
Right.
If they go to take that money out and go spend it on useless stuff or put it in their bank account, then they have to pay the capital gains bill.
So they have to reinvest it.
As long as they reinvest it back into, I don't know if it just has to be real estate, but as far as I know it does, they can continue to roll that forward, which allows the continual turnover too, which actually keeps the prices from going crazy. Because here our prices have gotten exorbitant because nobody's willing to sell. And the ones that do sell have these absurd prices because they need to pay the capital gains bill. So that's that, and it makes it unaffordable.
Yeah.
Versus there, you can actually turn it over at a reasonable rate. The next person can continue to roll forward, and the other guy can get in at a cost that isn't so crazy. Do you know what I mean? So it actually keeps the prices down, as weird as that sounds, and it makes a much more active market, which is nice.
Anytime you have more supply, more stuff available, it's going to keep the prices down.
Yeah.
So did you like enlist a realtor when you went down there? Or?
Yeah, so we met with a few different realtors, both commercial and residentially. We liked a few of them. It was the same thing, trying to use our techniques. You know, it was kind of funny being on the other end of the table.
Did you ask for a referral? Like to refer you a client?
Yeah. I asked for a 25% referral fee. No, but it was very weird being on the other end of the table and explaining what I was looking for, and then getting them to make sure they're on the same page. And then also I'm like, are they trying to sales me or are they being serious right now?
Yeah.
But I think we did pretty well, and we found a strong one in Charlotte, and then also actually a really good one in Raleigh. And the one from Raleigh, as odd as this sounds, I posted a story on Instagram, I think out of the airplane or something, just kind of indicating that I was leaving. And an agent from our office responded and said, "Where are you going?" And I said where I was going, North Carolina. She used to be an agent in North Carolina.
In our office?
Yes.
Who?
Siba.
No way. I didn't know that.
Siba's officially been called out.
Yeah.
And so she sent me the name.
Siba's awesome.
Yeah, she is. And so she now, she gave me the name. We met. She was super, super on it. Like, she was super quick to give us stuff. She's already been sending us new listings. She's a residential agent, but she's like helping us get into the commercial side, connected us with builders, the whole works.
Nice.
All over it. So she did a great job, and we intend to use her for sure in our purchase in the Raleigh area. And also in Charlotte, we had another good guy that we met with that he had just started his own commercial brokerage, but he understood the game. I could tell, like, talking to him, he could spit out the numbers of like price per doors in the different areas, what the rents were, the overall turnover costs, vacancy rates. And that's actually, on another note, the vacancy rate there is on average 5%.
Ooh.
So little bit different. Yeah.
It's a little spicy.
And the expectation with an apartment there is a pool, a gym, cinema rooms.
This is also Neal's expectation of a personal apartment. Cool, Jim. Really?
because they build complexes.
Even in like a 20-unit building, though?
Not in a 20-unit building. Not in a 20-unit building. But the big buildings and the big complexes, because that's what they do. They do more complexes there than just standalone buildings.
Yeah, like a little quad almost.
They do a lot of quads. Like everything was a quad. And they do a big pool in the middle with a common games room or a cinema room, something like that. That is a major expectation.
I can't even imagine like an apartment complex with a pool in town. Like, I would not want to swim in that pool.
No, but they're beautiful. Yeah. Like, I could not believe. We went and visited a friend down there, and she was staying in a brand new building. And wow, we walked around, like, the lobbies, enormous, huge, like, hallways, big, like, spiral staircases, and like reading rooms, and massive pool with like the funky S-shaped chairs and like gazebos and fireplaces. And I was like,
the funky S-shaped chairs.
People know what I'm talking about.
They do. I knew what you're talking about.
You knew exactly what I was talking about when I said that. But anyway, so yeah, it's a little bit different market, different style. It's definitely going to take some time to learn it. And that's why we want to start with a small building to get our contacts down pat.
Yeah.
And then it looks like land development makes more sense. That's kind of what
really? Okay.
Well, here's the thing. If you're picking something up at 155, you're spending the 20 grand a door. You have an old building versus there you can build for almost under 200 a door. Does it make sense to buy old? I don't think so.
No.
And that's why you see most people are tearing the old stuff down and building new. And it also gives you the opportunity to go at a faster rate. Because my concern is when you're trying to find old, facing that now, we're both facing that now, you get to a point where it's like, you got to buy 8 units.
Yeah.
Like how many? You got to buy 20 of those this year to meet the equivalent of the one building you're going to build.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make sense. So that's going to be the other issue and kind of dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to look at the possibility of building new. There are lots down there sell for around 30 a door approved. Permitting time, they were not optimistic. We had one fellow tell us around 12 months, and then I talked to the builder and he laughed. He said 18 to 24 months. So a similar.
Yeah, it's similar to here.
Similar permitting time.
But there you could build out of wood, no question to ask. Probably even higher than 6 stories, but.
Only 6 stories in the wood.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But 12 months, he said you have your first units ready to move into, which I thought was fast.
That is fast. Here, 18 months if you're really pushing it, but 2 years is kind of what they tell you.
Yeah, he said fully occupied in 2 years.
Cool.
But again, they have no labor shortage, and they don't seem. When I asked him about material shortages, he didn't seem to.
What are you talking about?
Basically, and that was also a different perspective. Remember, I was screaming about everything being in a shortage here. Didn't quite feel like that down there. Like, we drove some of the dealerships.
Maybe your recession.
Maybe I lied earlier. No, I'm still a little hell bent down. You just talked about how rates are going up. That's going to bite some of us in the butt.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah,
that's super exciting, man.
Yeah. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. I'll keep everyone abreast as I start to buy something. If I get something under contract, we can throw it up and we can analyze why it's happening.
North Carolina, come on and stand up. Shout out to PD Pablo. Cool, man. Well, that's exciting. Obviously, we'll miss you investing here and making the news and all that. So hopefully you still work here a fair bit too.
Okay.
I mean, like, there's the underlying current, though, again, of like, well, why would you go elsewhere? And unpack that for me, because this is something we've danced around a little bit with, like, you know, do you bang your head against the wall in an area that you love and that you maybe have personal connection to and that you're from? And in my case, like, my family is here and all this. Like, I've mentioned multiple times that my buildings are all within walking distance of my actual house. And I like making my neighborhood nicer through these developments. But there's certainly times of frustration dealing with things here locally.
So there's a bit of an X factor. And I think this is what started me hunting in the States. Just, again, it was kind of a potential thing. And, banging my head against the wall here in Halifax. So I have, like we kind of talked about before, there's certain goals that everyone sets up. I've set certain goals that I want to achieve at certain points in my life. And I was struggling to kind of achieve some of those here. I've been fortunate I've been achieving them so far. But even now as I achieve them, I feel, I don't want to say regretful for achieving them, but I feel like there's been a bit of a distaste on some parties. And in general, it's just like, I feel like what I'm doing is wrong. Like, I honestly really do. Like, I don't feel right about what I'm doing at any point, whether it's being a real estate agent and then being successful at that. It doesn't feel right in a lot of ways. And then on now getting into the development and rental market, it's also not giving me a warm and fuzzy feeling. And after spending some time in the States over the last probably 5 years, I found it was a very different sentiment where they really...
Yeah, like they don't villainize success is what you're kind of alluding to.
Exactly. Yeah. They don't villainize the success. They'd like to celebrate success, and it's very like encourage there to be entrepreneurial and start your own thing and chase the American dream, and growth and achieving is a good thing, and it's respected.
I think you're encouraged to be entrepreneurial here as long as you stay a mom and pop operation. So as soon as you try to get bigger than that, then all of a sudden, I don't know, people are like, whoa. Don't get too fancy on us here.
That's kind of, on average. It's a very hard thing. You have to maintain a very strong culture of kind of what people want and expect. I would say even some of the replies that we're receiving to what I said about luxury cars would kind of indicate that people are trying to you don't need to have that. And I'm not saying that you need to have that. I'm just saying that it tends to create a certain type of perception.
Well, even the fact that it has to be a conversation of like, well, how will people look at me if I drive a nicer car?
Exactly. Yeah. That in itself, I think, kind of proves a point. I mean, there is a bit of that everywhere you go. But I just found in general, it wasn't quite as, I guess, it wasn't villainized. And so that really kind of attracted me, just because I'm not necessarily feeling the love on this side of the border. I still want to live in Canada. I still love it here, and I still think I want to do business here. Yeah. But it's just, I find it's more difficult for a lot of those reasons. And that's one thing that I just think is actually it's impeding it, because the general sentiment actually pushes on maybe on the political powers, which ultimately put the rules in place.
It's not just like Twitter fingers online, people being petty. Like, these things have increasingly started to inform policy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we are increasingly socialist as a country, right? And how a person feels about that is obviously individual, but it's changed a lot of, it just limited growth in a lot of ways. And the idea has increasingly become, there's that old adage, Lord Acton, of, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
And oddly, that's been kind of co-opted for this sort of socialist idea of, if money equals power and power corrupts, then power is inherently evil, and by extension, making money is inherently evil. And there's like this kind of little sliding scale, right? Which just isn't true for all kinds of reasons, because that does make sense. People aren't so, all the people in one group aren't the same. All the people in another group aren't the same ever in any group at all. But there is that kind of sentiment going on there that is the undercurrent of a lot of movements at the heart of our political debate right now.
Yeah, 100%. And so, again, I don't know. It's not the end of the world. It's just something that I've noticed, and in my desires to achieve certain levels of business, I feel like there's an aspect of that that's going to play into it, and so that's kind of part of the reason that I've explored there. I intend to look at other parts of the world as well, but the best thing with the States for me is obviously proximity and similarity in general, like day-to-day operation versus having on top of having to learn a new market or learning all the new practices. If I have to go to a whole different world where I don't even know the culture.
Yeah, you're talking similar demographics, similar culture, same language, all these things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That would be so hard. I'm impressed and envy those guys that we have lots of clients like this that come here and don't have anything, and they learn the culture, learn the language, assimilate, and then bust their butt to grow a business.
Yep.
Like, that is insanely hard. To do it without having to do all those other hurdles is crazy. And so to do that is even more insane. But so that's something that's definitely starting to play into it a little bit. And then obviously there's the other items of like they have privatized banking, which means you can get some really interesting bank loans. They were talking about like 100% kind of stuff. And then again, the market's 10 times bigger.
Right. Yeah. Once you're down there, state to state, bigger cities in the same, like geographically, it's shorter to bounce around between major cities. Yeah. Like, we're making hay here in Halifax. If we were to go to like the next big city to make hay, where would we go? Montreal, right? Like, it's a good chunk of distance away. Yeah. No, it's interesting. And I mean, I think there's a whole episode and conversation about, I mean, it's so funny to feel like you have to defend capitalism and then worry as you're saying it, like, oh my God, I'm defending capitalism. People might like be upset with me. And, there's the saying, capitalism is the worst except for all of the other systems. Yeah. Right? And I mean, I think our neo-capitalist system that we have here in Canada has been amazing, and it's part of the reason we enjoy such a great quality of life. But it is increasingly kind of being villainized as we steer a little bit more socialist, as if people have a very short memory about the dubious history of that political ideological experiment and how it's backfired over the years. And I think there needs to be this kind of dialogue between, if you want to call it conservative, liberal, left, right. They both need each other because they're two very different ways of looking at the world. But this idea that capitalism is inherently bad is just so wrong. It's just a very weird thing to think of, like, okay, if people are this, they're one way. If they're that, they're another way. It just doesn't make sense. I also wondered, like, well, at what point do you become an evil capitalist, right? Because like you start the business and you're like, oh, good for you, man. We're so happy for you. Or then like maybe, or you work a job and you're like, here, and then you join a union. It's like, oh, that's a good socialist thing. You join the union, but then like the union pays you more. So now you're making a little more money. And then you decide to be like head of the union, which is like, okay, that's kind of an organizational structure and climbing a ladder, if you will. Yeah. And then, maybe you get headhunted to work in the HR department of a privatized company. Like, at what point along there did you become evil? Because I know I've had this situation myself. Like, I'm a very different person from a fiscal economic standpoint than I was when I was 21. But I know that I'm the same person myself. In fact, I think I'm a better person in terms of like moral, ethical, who I what mark I want to make in the world. I don't feel that my capitalist endeavors, which have been to be successful and to provide for the people around me, have made me any more inherently evil. But that's not the prevailing sentiment out there.
Biting my tongue on a lot of things here.
I think it's an important conversation.
It is an important conversation.
This is the most we've bitten our tongue in a while here.
I know. Yeah, this is. We're both stumbling here. But I'm going to answer your question, I think, how I see it. I think you become evil in the eyes of many once you basically start flaunting it. Honestly, as shallow as that is. Now that doesn't make you evil, in my opinion. I think when it becomes a problem is when you look down upon others based on necessarily their financial, socioeconomic status.
Oh, totally. I mean, being a dick, it's always going to make you evil, right? But like, I'm saying people are, just generally being like, I don't know this person, but I dislike them because
they have money.
They are successful within this capitalist system that's provided all these things, all this device that I want to be here and yell on the internet. Like, wouldn't have that without the capitalist system, it's far from perfect, but it has increased our quality of life.
I'm gonna use my car as an example. I use this all the time. The car I had
that's not proving the point, Neal.
No, but the car before this, I had a really good. Nobody would really consider me to be an arsehole. And then you tie this new car, and then there's this new sentiment that I've now gone too far, And then this is when I started receiving the comments, and people start disliking it, even though I got that for myself
Yeah.
from something that I earned.
Yeah.
And it really had no impact. Like, my financial status wasn't any better when I bought that than when I bought the previous vehicle, but it visually looked like it was. And this is now, it's an excessive waste of money. Like, it made no difference.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think anyone's going to be like, we're not saying, oh my gosh, we need sympathy, and oh, people are being mean to us online and blah, blah. Like, we don't care.
No.
The thing that's more interesting is that it becomes this.
What is it that creates this perception? And
Well, but also, what are the ramifications of that perception? It's heavily weighted that way in the media, and it's increasingly starting to inform our government policies.
Yeah.
And some of those policies, are not quote unquote good for business. They're not good for business, period. Then this is why people start looking to other areas. But if the underlying current comes from this very simple idea that, or the underlying motivation is like, well, we just don't like people having more money, I think that's, kind of a flawed rationale. I don't think that's the issue. Obviously, inequality is a big issue.
Yeah.
That needs to be addressed. But that's not what people yell about. Right?
And
people yell about just that they hate.
There's also this silent majority voice of a few concept too that plays into it a lot. And I think this is where you don't the voter turnouts are always super low.
Yeah.
And let's say, like, for example, with the rent control thing, like, only a small percentage of people actually showed up to these events and to rally outside of the buildings and all these different things. But they made their voices heard, and so then it became that the general sentiment was that, and so then they did it. But if you were to poll 100% of people, the actual outcome might be very different.
Well, this is why, look who has won elections, right? Like, if the elections were run on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, the NDP would win in a wash, and they lose badly in most cases. And we elected a conservative government here. So there is an element of that. I guess the part that is a bit more concerning to me is, what is the end game of this? And increasingly, it just creates this big divide. And we're seeing it here firsthand as landlords of how we're being scapegoated and presented in the media.
Yeah.
And which, if someone wants to have a debate over the merits of things like rent control and taxation, if you want to have a informed, educated debate, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's just that's not how it's actually being done. It's rude. It's attacking. It's
using and like we saw yesterday in our meeting, it's using a certain situation to attack a other item. So you were asking a question about a $50 rent increase that's agreed upon by both the tenant and the landlord.
Yeah.
And the immediate response from 2 or 3 of the panelists was, I have tenants that are getting 70% increases. And I understand, but I'm asking a question regarding moderate rent increases.
Yeah.
And they could not comprehend that question due to the fact that all they kept responding back with was, well, I have a tenant who got a 60% rent increase.
Yeah.
I have a tenant who got a 200% rent increase. And understood that is also happening. But then we need to also make efforts to be able to have moderate rent increases with people to be able to avoid having those 60, 100% ones. And yes, there might be, let's say 10% or 20, let's say 40% are having those crazy ones. There's also still a 60% that need to work on the moderate ones.
Yeah. And this, I guess, is kind of where my gripe comes from. Is just like these broad strokes of this group needs to always feel this way, and that group needs to always feel this way, and this group over here is bad, and this is what everyone in this group does all the time. And it just is so weird for me as someone who's really individualistic. Like, I just never think that way. And so it's just a weird mindset. I mean, we're kind of running out of time here, but we got this question actually from someone. Again, people sending questions. This is great. This listener said, I've started to really push myself because I want to be successful and build wealth. I've been listening to the podcast and reading, just educating myself. Most recently, I became a landlord for the first time. But lately, some of my friends, one in particular, is seeming to not like where I'm going or trying to go. At what point do you have to leave certain people behind? And I don't really even care about the last part of the question. I mean, you leave people behind if they're bringing you down. And we've talked about surrounding yourself with good people who support you and want to see you succeed.
Yeah.
But it's just like, that's a case where, I don't know if you've ever felt this way. I'm like, I'm still the exact same person, but as I do X, Y, Z in my business life and have successes, people just kind of look at you different, and it's
100%. And I think it's people that you've known the longest or come from similar backgrounds. And they sometimes, I think it's a competitive nature. Like it boils down to some competitiveness with people, like where they are either competing to keep up or do better. Additionally, there's also the aspect of like they compare themselves, and so they feel worse about themselves, and so they don't enjoy seeing you succeed. And so it plays. I think there's a few different factors that play into why someone would start to kind of not like what you're doing and maybe not encourage it at some point or kind of passive aggressively push it down. But I think that's very, very common. And I think that's, I don't know if it's a North American culture thing, but keeping up with the Jones, like it's I think that really, really plays into it. And it's not even competitive that they need to beat you or be first. But then again, it's the idea of like now that you're doing that, they feel like they're not doing.
Yeah, but then there's also a lot of things though right now. People saying, well, if you aspire to that, again, like that's bad. If you want to make it as a success in the corporate world, well, that is a corrupt world.
You can't be successful without doing something corrupt.
That's kind of
I hear that so much.
That's the implication, and it just isn't true because that's like saying, well, you can't be a failure without being incredibly a good person, totally ethical, and blah blah blah, right? Like what is this sliding scale here? Yeah. Not everyone who doesn't participate in capitalist ambition is inherently good, just like everyone who does isn't inherently evil.
Yeah,
that's a big loaded topic for perhaps another day to explore. But it just made me think of it, and it's related because you're kind of looking elsewhere for a few different reasons. One, just sort of the welcomeness of the idea and the support of being successful, but also the way that attitude and that shift that we're having here in Canada is starting to inform policy. Like capital gains is bad at 50%. Well, he's talking about moving it to 75%.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's where we seem to be headed here, and it's not, quote unquote, good for business. It's not.
Yeah.
So.
No. Well, I'd be nice if we get some feedback on this one. We've been getting feedback, actually. I say this.
Yeah.
Like we've been getting feedback, and don't be afraid to like direct message us. I know some of these comments you might not necessarily want to put on a post for everybody to see. So, but people have been emailing and sending us texts or DMs and things like that. Send them over. Be super curious to know what some people's take is on some of these comments that we've made today.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like it'll be interesting because some people will just come in hot with some like thing, and we're just saying like it's a discussion. It's not so simple as what's right and what's wrong and what's ethical and what's unethical. And these are just systems and people operating within them.
Yeah.
But anyway,
give us your take.
Yeah. Cool. What else is going on this week, man? We got another episode coming up soon. We're going to do commercial financing part 2 with our buddy Igor.
Yep.
We're going to tackle a few more topics of what's going on. We're going to talk a little bit about iBuying in the States. We're going to talk about the metaverse, real estate in the metaverse.
Oh, get ready for that.
So we've got some cool stuff coming up. Just keep listening and share, smash a like, hit us up.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks.
When I was broke, I had rich habits.